Hey, beautiful. How'd you like to come to my beach house and
Forget it, you plastic-haired, sweater-over-the-shoulder loser.
I'm covering a few revivals in my Every Cartoon of 2023 ranked video, which is coming along just swimmingly. It got me thinking about how tricky it is for an animated series to pick up where it left off, despite technical advances, staff turnover, or just the passage of time. If you can circumvent most of these factors, audiences usually won't be able to tell that much has changed. Otherwise, a revival is going to feel like a soft reboot instead of a natural continuation. If that were the case, then you wouldn't choose to air the pre- and post-revival episodes back to back. That would just confuse audiences. I was first exposed to Johnny Test during a family vacation in August of 2010, and realized a strange inconsistency between some of the episodes that Cartoon Network would rerun. Sometimes the intro had these shots of all these enemies and allies, followed by Johnny transforming in an elevator, and other times there was just recycled clips. I forgot about this until a few months later on November 2nd, 2010. After consuming the majority of the series up until that point, I caught re-airings of what I would come to know as the very first 2 episodes of the series, and that's when everything started to click. See, Johnny Test was originally produced by Warner Bros. Animation with hand-drawn animation for their Kids WB block. It was one of 3 shows launched on September 17, 2005, alongside such classics as We Have SpongeBob at Home, and a Looney Tunes reboot updated for the children of the 2000s. This was a great era for animation. According to seasons 2 and 3 animation director Ron Doucet,
Kids WB closed their doors, so after season 1 of Johnny Test had aired, it was kind of cancelled along with all the other properties on Kids WB unless other broadcasters could adopt them and find them a home to be made for cheaper. A company called Cookie Jar in Canada bought the distribution rights, retained the voice actors, and had the creator write 52 new 11-minute episodes for a 2nd and 3rd season, as long as Cookie Jar could find a Canadian studio to animate it for cheaper than Korea had done for season 1. Canada offered it in HD, digital, no language barriers, time zone difference of 1 to 4 hours instead of 10 to 14 hours. Oh, and since it was digital pipelines, we could do revision. Korea did it on paper, and they'd film it or send the paperwork to get scanned.
the animation studio Kaleidoscope redesigned the characters and backgrounds to be animated in Adobe Flash, which Bardell and Atomic Cartoons would follow for the remainder of the original run. By the time I got into it, towards the end of Season 4's rollout, the hand-drawn WB episodes only made up 20% of the entire series, so they accidentally felt special, and most people feel the same way. The consensus is that the first season is the only good one, and that's something I want to explore, especially now that some lost media regarding that batch of episodes has come to my attention.
Come get me, mole people! I'm full of macho, leathery biker goodness!
I like that this is one of the first jokes in the show. Nice tone setter. Putting it into context, I'm only now realizing how solid of a pilot Johnny to the Center of the Earth is, where Johnny and his stalking dog Dookie must track down the source of mysterious sinkholes after his dad's camera is accidentally stolen, which leads them to face off against a race of mole people.
Whoa, didn't see that coming.
Every main and most of the secondary cast members are introduced, hitting on so many dynamics within only 10 minutes. Check out this clip where Bling Bling gets captured after trying to save the main duo.
Johnny, your sisters. His sisters? Don't talk to me about his sisters. They used their only brother as a personal test tube and turned me into a canine freak!
They told me to give you this salt.
Yet I do love them so.
Within about 15 seconds, we learn that Dookie hates how Susan and Mary used Johnny to test their experiments. Susan and Mary are the reason why Dookie is anthropomorphic. These are probably connected. And yet Dookie is still fond of the sisters. Also, Bling Bling and Johnny are usually pretty friendly when they don't need to fight each other. It's really efficient storytelling. There's a lot of hints like that towards the characters having extra depth or pre-established histories, some of which get developed later. But none of this interrupts the plot. It still feels like a regular adventure.
Do you still have your evil Surface Smasher 9000 you used to brag about?
Yeah, why?
They raise the stakes in a fun way with the threat of the test kids being grounded if they're late to dinner, and there's multiple twists with proper setups and payoffs. It kind of raised my expectations too high, cause the sister episode keeps upping the ante. But then Susan and Mary give Johnny a new superpower, and luckily it's exactly what he needs to save the day. It's okay though, the Pizza Tower guy is here. Whenever the climax comes around, I was surprised to realize that next to Susan, Mary, and Dookie, Johnny is most often the leader. He's the underestimated underdog whose brain has been rotted by enough movies and video games to not be as rational as his dog or methodical as his sisters.
so it's a good thing he watches too much TV.
Johnny's VA, James Donald Taylor, has noted that there's a lot of creators Scott Fellows in the character, just like the protagonist of his first series, Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide. While both are awkward and overconfident with moments of brilliance, Ned still manages to be a role model to both the characters and audience. Johnny is neither. Johnny Test is not cool.
Step aside and watch the master.
Boy, you really showed her, Master.
I think this is why Dookie has always been my favorite. I enjoy his older brother-like relationship with Johnny, but he's the funniest when not wanting to be there.
Can I live here? Please!
If Johnny does something careless or selfish, he will get punished for it. And the same goes for Susan and Mary. To the pair, Johnny's an easy scapegoat for being the younger, less reliable sibling. So they balance out the brothers' lab break-ins and invention misuse with a plot where the sisters brainwash Dookie into being their servant. I think my favorite stories had the Test kids make sacrifices for each other, like Johnny breaking into Bling Bling Island to retrieve the stolen Turbo Action backpack for his sister's presentation, or Susan and Mary transferring their pheromones to Johnny after a failed experiment in order to save his social rep. Two of my favorites from the season. However, I've always wondered, what were they trying to do with Sonic Johnny? Of course, I'm going to talk about this one.
Johnny, don't you get it? We've traveled into the future, destroyed it, and now we're wanted fugitives!
In this Back to the Future spoof, Susan and Mary give Johnny a super scooter, knowing that he'll accidentally use it to create global electromagnetic ripples that'll puncture the space-time continuum, destroying the future and making him and Dookie fugitives. It's cool to see futuristic iterations of Pork Belly, but I think the episode stuck with me because it doesn't make much sense. They just gloss over the implications of Johnny and Dookie disappearing for decades, or why Susan and Mary thought it would be funny to make them criminals.
It was a cruel trick. We were young.
Lil Johnny is another one with a bizarrely dark tone. Johnny and Dookie accidentally shrink themselves to a subatomic level and enter a minuscule universe that's a perfected version of their reality.
Some scientists believe every atom in your body could hold a tiny universe so small you can't see it. More importantly, subatomic ham is delicious.
They try to steal the lives of their recolored counterparts, but since they've unbalanced the number of Johnnies and Dookies in the world, they have to leave because God is basically trying to destroy them.
According to our calculations, because there are one too many Johnny and Dookies in our universe,
The forces that control it are trying to eradicate you through hail, lightning, and maybe worse.
Having a willingness to do these darker and more conceptual sci-fi romps is what sets this season apart from the others, and what my appetite for stuff like Futurama. Also Rick and Morty for that recent decade when Futurama went off the air. Special mention also goes to Johnny Test, Extreme Crime Stopper. Always love seeing Pork Belly at night throughout the goofy 70s style car chases. Season 1 is also filled with moments in nearly every episode where you're reminded that despite their bickering, the Tests love each other.
They can't diss my sisters like that.
Yeah, only we can diss him like that.
Shouldn't we try to help Johnny? He is our brother.
I knew you'd come to rescue me.
I really tried not to.
hey, you can't diss our brother like that.
Yeah, only we can.
Sometimes they phone these bits in a little, but I always appreciate how they bring the heart to the forefront.
Come on, Dad, you can do this!
Thanks, son. I feel much better.
Fun fact, whenever I hear the end of this intro, I think of Johnny Test Season 1, because on Mill Creek Entertainment's DVDs, every episode opened with this. Luckily, my crime against animation was nullified by the fact that Animaniacs had an inferior reboot. Visually, I think the age-old Johnny Test ripped off Dexter's Lab debate can be settled by the fact that this first season shared a director, art director, and character designer from the latter half of Dexter. Similarly to Fairly Odd Parents, it kind of mutates that flat and graphic UPA style. Here it's less geometric and given more volume, though the backgrounds are still abstract.
Boy, they don't call it the dark side of the moon for nothing.
It's fun to notice artifacts of the style finding its footing, like disgusting one-off incidentals, really pronounced secondary movement on the characters, menacing and devious drawings of the cast that are burned into my brain, and John K. Johnny. They really covered all their bases in this first episode. Something that no future seasons or the revival would do is change up the art direction, which happens when Johnny watches a blockbuster movie or toy commercial cartoon.
A new threat has entered the land of the Roboticals, Nasteria. He's so evil you can't believe how evil he is.
Johnny Hollywood sets up the premise of Johnny and Dookie hopping between various films from his dad's DVD cabinet, but then they only visit 3 in total. I really wish we got to see what the other movies look like, said the guy whose favorite Fairly Odd Parents special is Channel Chasers.
Well, why should I be in just one show when I can be in all of them?
I love that the actor Speed McCool was designed to be drawn in this slightly more realistic early 2000s action show style, so it's funny to see him next to Johnny and Dookie, but even funnier that he wasn't redrawn to fit alongside the rest of the cast in subsequent appearances. He's the only handsome man in a sea of freaks. Compared to the following 5 seasons, and not rig-based animation in general, I think I prefer the extra number of angles and expressions that the traditional look allows for. However, it's now clear to me that this was never a high-budget cartoon. Movements can chug, especially during crowd scenes. The expressions don't always fit the line read.
Uh-oh!
Twin characters get their voices mixed up a couple times.
We've got to get the lab ready for the party!
Ultimately, I still prefer the lower energy and slower pace that lead to a more subtle style of humor, especially paired with the soundtrack by Kevin Manthei. He also composed for Invader Zim, and channels that energy into a score that ups the intensity, so every invention feels powerful. He also composed the theme song, which beautifully describes Dookie as having a muttly face and contains the line, "Johnny's room? Messy room." Manthei uploaded an early version to his YouTube channel with no sound effects, incomplete backgrounds, and uncolored character, and it's really cropped down from 16:9, even though Season 1 has only ever been distributed in 4:3. Warner Brothers started producing animated series in the widescreen aspect ratio with Mucha Lucha and Baby Looney Tunes. But that doesn't guarantee there's a version of, oh wait, here comes the crop transition. Through an upload of a dubbed theme aired on Irish channel TG4's Cula4 block, we now know there's a partially lost widescreen version of the first season. You can see more backgrounds that wouldn't be visible if the standard definition cut was stretched. This led to the discovery of compressed 16:9 clips found in 4:3 Kids WB promos, now compiled on the Lost Media Wiki. While editing, I spotted a few alternate animation takes and unfinished elements, like Bling Bling's effects not being chroma keyed in yet. You'll love to see it. James Arnold Taylor said that he was replaced as the voice of Johnny for the series mid-production, and needed to quickly re-record the character's lines for the first 6 half hours.
I knew you'd come to rescue me.
I really tried not to.
The initial actor has never been identified, but I wouldn't be surprised if this was them here. I still prefer him to the very cursed Tom Kenny Dookie in this commercial.
As Johnny Test's talking dog, I enjoy the finer things, like triple venti lattes.
Apparently, a few cropped clips can also be found in a trailer from the 2005 press kit, featuring clips from the first full episode. I wonder if there's more info on the early years of the show in there. So I walked 5 feet over to my bookshelf and opened my copy up. The kit contains a CD-ROM, a 16-page booklet, and a detachable door hanger with scrolling messages on Johnny's crotch. Both the booklet and disc contain the same publicity materials: a series description, fact sheet, character descriptions, and voice actor bios. All of this will be sent to news outlets, presumably to publicize the series debut. An interactive QuickTime video is also included on the disc that presents all of the same info, along with a few extra voice lines from Beta Johnny.
I can feel my brain expanding already.
I can feel my brain expanding already.
It is partially broken, so I'm not sure how to preserve it. Let me know if any QuickTime wizards can help me with that. There's a lot of details here that, while publicly available through press releases or website bios, either weren't present or got glossed over in the show. Susan and Mary are 13, Johnny is 11, Dookie was Johnny's 11th birthday present, Bling Bling's Bling was white once, Gail is a jock, and Sissy is implied to be trying to get Johnny to notice her.
Hey, Tess, I got a red half pipe for my birthday.
I always thought that Janet Nelson Jr. was an earlier, less active version of Sissy. They had the same will they won't they childhood crush dynamic with Johnny. Janet is just defined by being popular instead of an athletic tomboy. Turns out that one wasn't phased out in favor of another immediately, but Janet became a Season 1 exclusive. R.I.P. Trixie Tang 2.
Earlier, I thought you were gross, but now you look fab. I'm fickle. Let's dance.
Alongside high-res renders of 3 extra cartoony promotional images I've seen countless times but still adore, the press kit is covered in early artwork and model sheets. And by model sheets, I mean Susan and Mary are in these poses most of the time when they're on screen. I recognize this drawing from a Kids WB browser game I used to play too much of, and this one is from the still lost 2004 pilot, which was ironically animated in Flash.
I'm full of macho leathery
sweet biker goodness.
While it would be great if Cookie Jar, now known as Wild Brain, would somehow obtain the uncropped Season 1 episodes from Warner and redistribute the series, there's probably a lot of legal red tape preventing that from happening. Still, I'm happy to have uncovered a small piece of Johnny Test's lore completely by accident when I bought this off eBay and slapped the trailer on Twitter. I've already uploaded the full press kit to archive.org, link in the description. I felt like this was the right topic to close 2023 out with because 1, dog cartoon, 2, I'm not done yet, and 3, it's the 5th anniversary of the history and legacy of Johnny Test. One of the first videos where I covered something older, something I dug into the creation of, something I had a personal connection with. I would not make it the same way now, but it proved to me that my perspective has value. Back then, I don't think I ever figured out if Season 1 was actually a quality product separate from the show, or if its uniqueness just bolstered it in my head. As much as I dug the early installment weirdness, the more fleshed out relationships, and the stronger presentation, it's still Johnny Test. I'm more fond of the childhood wish-fulfilling inventions like the DNA-based disguise hoop or the turbo-action backpack compared to the occasionally half-baked stories told with them.
Man, I love holograms.
It's nice that they reused and expanded upon these plot devices, like they don't exist in a vacuum, and I was very pleased to see a lot of one-off characters or inventions naturally return in future seasons. That's something I was disappointed by with the Netflix revival. Still well made and occasionally heartwarming, but the world felt smaller on top of the recycled assets and premises that got tiring in the last 20 segments. That might be the overall better show, but the very first season of Johnny Test feels like the most pure version of the concept. It's completely clear that Bling Bling is a spoiled teenage Bond villain, Mr. Black and Mr. White are Men in Black references poking fun at the pathetic US government in a post-9/11 world, and Brain Freezer is Mr. Freeze, but he likes coffee? Who knows where Johnny Test would be today if it continued without leaving Warner Brothers? I wonder if Dookie would still respect Johnny's pronouns.
He, she is hideous!